This is the fourth session in our series on intercession. And as we look at Exodus 32 and 33, I am suggesting that we see a dynamic representation of God's relationship with His creation emerge in the text, especially a dynamic relationship with the moral agents that He created in His own image and likeness. We've seen that in response to the people of Israel creating and worshiping an idol, God told Moses that He was going to make clean riddance of them and begin the project again, making a greater and mightier nation through Moses. In response to this, Moses entreats the Lord in protracted, reasonable, and specific intercession not to do what he announced he was planning to do. In response to the intercession of Moses, we have the amazing revelation in Exodus 32, verse 14, that God changed His mind about the harm He said He would do to His people. This declaration is a tremendous challenge to static or deterministic forms of theology. But as we continue with this account, it doesn't end here. As further dynamic activity unfolds with God and Moses and the people. So as we slowly work our way through verses 15 through 35, we will see that there is significant repercussion that takes place after God alters His plan of destroying the people. Prior to considering the first aspect of these repercussions, I want to comment on Ecclesiastes 8:11, which states, "Because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed quickly, therefore the hearts of the sons of men among them are given fully to do evil." In our contemporary setting, we are suffering through the violation of this truth. But it also helps us understand what takes place as God spares the people from utter destruction. There must be a consequence that communicates the horrendous nature of their evil behavior with the hope that it will prevent or discourage further evil. So we're going to read Exodus 32 verses 15 through 20 and begin to work through this text.
Then Moses turned and went down from the mountain with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand, tablets which were written on both sides. They were written on one side and the other. The tablets were God's work, and the writing was God's writing engraved on the tablets. Now when Joshua heard the sound of the people as they shouted, he said to Moses, "There is a sound of war in the camp." But he said, "It is not the sound of the cry of triumph, nor is it the sound of the cry of defeat, but the sound of singing I hear." It came about as soon as Moses came near the camp that he saw the calf and the dancing, and Moses' anger burned. And he threw the tablets from his hands and shattered them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf which they had made and burned it with fire and ground it to powder and scattered it over the surface of the water and made the sons of Israel drink it.
In verse 20, we see a consequence brought upon the people. First, Moses destroys their idol, a significant and bold move on the part of Moses, something that we might hesitate to do in our own contemporary environment when we confront evil, but Moses destroyed their idol. But he didn't stop there. And I want us to reflect upon the radical nature of what Moses does. Next, he burned it and ground it to powder. He scattered the powder on the water. But not just that, he made the people drink the water that had the gold dust from the idol in it. This move eventually turned the idol into human waste. Before further consequence comes to bear upon the people, Moses confronts Aaron, as we see in verses 21 and 25. Aaron was to exercise authority and external government of the people in an effort to keep them from doing something stupid and unproductive or destructive. According to the perspective Moses expresses in verse 21, Aaron was culpable, and his failure to exercise his authority effectively resulted in assisting the people in producing the outward manifestation of sin. In verse 25, we read, Aaron had let them get out of control. He did not take measures to prevent their action, but instead cooperated with their foolishness. In verses 22 through 24, Aaron attempts a feeble defense of his failure, simply blaming the people, but adding a lie that he threw the gold in the fire and out came this calf. When verse 4 tells us he fashioned it with a graving tool and made it into a molten calf. Also in verse 25, Moses acknowledges that their action was a bad witness to their enemies, which was just the opposite of their calling and purpose for existence. In verses 26 through 28, a horrible judgment is exercised. An opportunity to come out from among them was given, but of those refusing, 3,000 of the men died. The remaining were told to dedicate themselves to the Lord as Moses prepared to return to God to seek pardon, make atonement, and ask for a blessing from God. The interaction that follows is a further account of great intercession and an example of the dynamic relationship God has with His creation, and we will pick up with that in the next session.